The question on every mind in Washington and Tehran tonight is not if the United States Navy is moving, but whether the final order has already been given. We are looking at a mobilization of naval assets that President Trump has described in his own words as a beautiful armada. This is not a drill. This is not a standard freedom of navigation exercise. This is a kinetic ultimatum floating towards the Persian Gulf. For the last 48 hours, the world has watched a high-stakes poker game turn into a military encirclement. You clicked on this report because you want to know if we are literally moments away from a strike on Iran. The short answer is that the gun has been drawn, the safety is off, and the barrel is now pressed directly against the forehead of the Iranian regime. But what the mainstream media is failing to connect is that this armada isn't just targeting the Middle East. There's a second, darker layer to this strategy involving Venezuela that changes the entire map of this conflict. I'm going to walk you through exactly what has left U.S. ports, what the president has signaled on Truth Social, and why intelligence analysts are calling this the most dangerous 24-hour window since the Cuban Missile Crisis. We aren't just reading headlines here. We are analyzing the raw movements of the U.S. military-industrial complex to tell you what happens next. Let's look at the immediate reality on the water. President Trump has confirmed the deployment of a massive naval strike group. Specifically, we are tracking the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group, a floating city capable of leveling a small nation within hours. When a president uses the term armada, he is invoking a specific kind of historical imagery. He isn't talking about deterrence, he is talking about conquest. He is talking about overwhelming force. According to the latest reports from Al Jazeera and confirmable data from U.S. defense sources, this movement comes with a very specific condition: a new nuclear deal. The administration has made it clear that the time for negotiation in Vienna hotels is over. The new negotiation table is the deck of an aircraft carrier. Trump stated explicitly that he hopes they make a deal, but if they don't, the alternative is an attack soon. This is the key phrase you need to focus on: soon. In diplomatic speak, soon usually means months. In the language of the Trump doctrine, especially in this second term, soon often means the assets are already in position. The president has stated that if a deal is not reached regarding Iran's nuclear program, the response will be, quote, far worse, unquote, than anything seen previously. We need to pause and understand what far worse implies. We have seen drone strikes on generals. We have seen crippling sanctions that starved the Iranian economy. We have seen cyber attacks on centrifuges. If the threat is far worse than that, we are logically looking at a campaign of total air dominance aimed not just at nuclear sites, but at the regime's very ability to govern. And Tehran knows this. The response from the Iranian capital has been swift and unusually panicked. Iranian officials have issued a counter-statement warning that they will respond like never before. This phrase, like never before, mirrors Trump's own rhetoric. It creates a rhetorical escalation ladder where both sides have committed themselves to a response that breaks all historical precedents. But here is where the situation shifts from a regional standoff to a direct threat against the American homeland and the global economy. The markets are already bleeding. Crude oil prices are reacting violently to the mere suggestion of this armada arriving. Traders know that the moment the first Tomahawk missile leaves a destroyer, the Strait of Hormuz closes. That is 20% of the world's oil supply choked off instantly. For the average American, this isn't just a war on television. This is $5, maybe $6 at the gas within a week. It is a supply chain shock that could derail the fragile post-inflation recovery. However, there is a piece of this puzzle that almost everyone is ignoring, and it is arguably the most critical piece. While all eyes are fixed on the Persian Gulf, the president dropped a detail that changes the geometry of this war. He mentioned Venezuela. Why would the President of the United States link a strike on Iran with the socialist regime in Caracas? This is the twist. This is the moment where you realize this isn't just about a nuclear bomb in the desert.
For years, Iran and Venezuela have been building a transatlantic alliance. We know that Iranian operatives, technology, and potentially even ballistic hardware have moved between Tehran and Caracas. By targeting Venezuela in the same breath as Iran, the administration is signaling that they view this as a single, unified theater of war. The Armada isn't just sailing east. Elements of U.S. naval power are posturing towards the Caribbean. This is a containment strategy designed to prevent Iran from activating its assets in the Western Hemisphere. If the U.S. strikes Iran, the fear is not just a counterstrike in Israel or Saudi Arabia. The fear is a symmetric or asymmetric attack launched from America's own backyard, using Venezuelan soil as a staging ground. The president's mention of Venezuela confirms that the Pentagon believes the threat is global. They are anticipating that if they pull the trigger in the Gulf, the blowback will arrive in the Americas. This creates a psychological pressure cooker we haven't seen in decades. Let's go deeper into the timing. It is January 28, 2026. The geopolitical calendar is not on our side. Iran has been facing internal protests, significantly weakening the regime's grip on power. History tells us that weak regimes often seek external conflict to rally their population. A war with the Great Satan, as they call the United States, might be the only thing that saves the mullahs from their own people. Conversely, the Trump administration knows that a nuclear-armed Iran is a red line that cannot be crossed. The reports indicate that the window for this deal is closing rapidly. We aren't talking about weeks of diplomacy. The speed of the naval deployment suggests a timeline of days. The USS Abraham Lincoln does not sail halfway around the world to sit idle. It is a projection of power that costs millions of dollars a day to operate. It is there to force a capitulation or to execute a strike mission. We also have to analyze the specific language used on Truth Social. The president called the Armada beautiful. This aestheticizing of military force is a trademark move, but it serves a strategic purpose. It signals confidence. It signals to the American public that this will be a clean, superior display of might, similar to the Tomahawk strikes in Syria during his first term. But Iran in 2026 is not Syria in 2017. Iran has spent the last decade hardening its facilities. They have buried their centrifuges deep under mountains. They have developed advanced drone swarms, the same kind that have plagued battlefields in Eastern Europe. A strike on Iran is not a push-button affair. It is a complex, high-risk operation that requires total air superiority. If the order has indeed been given, or is sitting on the Resolute desk waiting for a signature, we must anticipate the immediate fallout. First, the cyber war. Before a single missile lands, we will likely see a massive cyber exchange. Iran has demonstrated significant capabilities in this domain. American infrastructure, banks, and water systems could be targeted in retaliation. Second, the proxy war. Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen. They will all receive the order to fire. U.S. troops stationed across the Middle East are effectively sitting in the kill box right now. The deployment of the Armada is intended to deter them, but it might also provoke them. Third, the Venezuela factor. If the U.S. Navy creates a blockade around Venezuela to stop Iranian movement, we are looking at a secondary crisis that pulls in other South American nations and potentially Russia or China, who have interests in the region. The president's ultimatum is a gamble. It's a high-stakes bet that the threat of fire and fury will force Iran to blink. He is betting that the regime is too weak, too fractured by protests, and too afraid of the beautiful Armada to risk total war. But what if they don't blink? What if the hardliners in Tehran decide that a conflict is inevitable and choose to strike first? This is the scenario that keeps generals awake at night. The respond-like-never-before threat from Iran suggests they have prepared a surprise. Is it a swarm attack on the carrier group? Is it a dirty bomb? Is it a localized attack on the U.S. energy grid? We must also consider the domestic angle. The American public is weary of foreign wars, but the framing here is specific. It is framed as a defense of the U.S. dollar, which relies on the stability of global oil trade. It is framed as preventing a nuclear holocaust. By linking the Armada to national survival and economic stability, the administration is preparing the narrative for kinetic action. As we watch the satellite imagery of the USS Abraham Lincoln cutting through the waters, moving closer to the red line, we have to accept a new reality. The era of proxy wars might be ending. We are returning to the era of direct state-on-state confrontation. The Armada has arrived. The pieces are on the board. The ultimatum has been delivered. The only question left is whether the phone rings in Tehran or if the sirens start ringing in Tel Aviv and Saudi Arabia. We will continue to monitor the movement of these ships hour by hour. Strategic command is silent, which usually means operations are active. Stay vigilant. This is a developing situation that changes not by the day, but by the minute.